Welcome to On Top of the Covers, a weekly podcast by Orlove, dedicated to all of you guys, the creative visionaries, entrepreneurs, artists, makers, disruptors, all of you guys out there that are really redefining how to contribute to the culture of music. And so we feature a lot of inspirational stories and people and how their paths were in, essentially, as we say all the time, how they did it creatively, artistically, personally, and professionally. The path to success, as we often talk about, is whatever you make it, right? And it's really about how you want to define your path to success. And we talked to some really amazing people within the music space and what they're doing. I'm Matt Gottesman, your host and director of the Orlove brands. You guys can always reach out to us at We Are Orlove on Instagram or at Matt Gottesman. You guys know I answer each and every single text, DM, reply, response for like the last 10 years. And it's been really interesting getting to know all of you as a community. And we always say that, music is one of our biggest connectors in the world. It's this common bond where we all live it, love it, immerse ourselves in it in some way. And so we're opening up these conversations on the art and its contributors and their missions. And as I said at the very beginning, we want to show you unconventional ways and different paths to success because everything is unconventional these days. So we're going to dive right in. And I have another incredible guest today, Evan Sachs. And he's the head of operations for 1001 track lists and Songstats. And he oversees the day-to-day operations in cross-functional role, including project management, CRM, financial management, and more. Basically a music lover based in Bali, currently in New York right now, and currently balancing his time managing the day-to-day operations for both 1001 Tracklist and Songstats, its sister company. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that here on the episode. And before that, he worked as an IT consulting at an old IT consulting firm in Washington, D.C. And while he was there, he sent a message to 1001 Tracklist seeking to get involved and help build out the platform. And isn't this the way it always happens? He was shocked to learn that it was solely being run by the website founder, with whom he then built a relationship and started to take over many of the business-facing responsibilities. And it allowed him to shift into a mostly technical role. And then shortly after he got involved with 1001 Tracklist, he and his team had the idea for what eventually became Songstats. And it was intended to be more of this 1001 Tracklist Pro platform for artists to get notified as they're being played, right, by other DJs and to track the analytics coming from the site. But the idea morphed into a cross-platform music analytics. So I know all of you guys, all you music creators out there, all you industry folk, I'm sure you already know about it, but in case you don't, check them out. And then, from there, it evolved further to cover every genre of music. And last year, they launched the platform under the Songstats branding as a sister business to 1001 Tracklist. And we're going to jump right in. But Evan, thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we never do anything conventional here because our guests are never conventional in terms of their paths and, how they got to where they're going. And so we always like to start off with rapid fire questions. It's just a great way to, people usually save those for the end. We say, let's start off at the beginning with them and see where the conversation takes us. So are you ready to jump into those?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Amazing. And then afterwards, what I want to do from there is I definitely want to jump into a little bit of your background, more of the journey of it, because I would love for the audience to get to know a little bit more about, how we got here to today, because, one, because it's unconventional. And I love it when people get to think outside the box for themselves as well. And they get to see like, oh, okay, there's no really one way to do it, right?
Yeah, it's definitely an unconventional and windy pathway for me.
Yeah, exactly. When I was reading your bio, I'm like, okay, there's a story here. So, but we'll start off with the rapid fire questions. So question one, slightly altered, but if all music is gone and you can only listen to 3 artists for the rest of your life, like Armageddon happens, God forbid, something random happens, all music is wiped off, but you're allowed 3 artists to listen to the rest of your life, who would they be?
Yeah, my mom wouldn't be thrilled about this answer because it's not the type of music that she grew up with or listens to today. But over the years, I've gotten really into electronic music, specifically like house and techno. It's kind of how I ended up doing what I'm doing with 1001 Tracklist. My favorite artist is Eric Prydz. I can listen to his music pretty much in any setting. So he's like the definite number one. Lane 8 is probably number 2. It's kind of more in the chill category of just like feel good, chill house music that I can enjoy. And then third is probably Jeremy Olander, which fits into that Eric Prydz mold of music that I like.
Good choices. Man, Eric Prydz, I've been listening to for so long, but all these got like a very distinct vibe. So
Yeah.
I definitely dig it. And question two sometimes relates to question one, I have found, because often, sometimes it includes that person. But the idea is name an influential person, living or non-living, that if you could interact with for one night, who would they be? And I always say it can be somebody that's like long past, somebody from history, Leonardo da Vinci. It could be anybody in the world or in throughout history or living today or one of these artists. Who would it be?
Yeah, so this actually goes more into my other interest of like just tech, and it would probably be Steve Jobs,
Mm,
just because that's the one who I think I can relate to more than Leonardo da Vinci, and I feel like it'd be really insightful to uncover just kind of like his mindset over time in terms of how he got to these game changing ideas and just the way that he places like UI UX and
yes.
design at the focus and how it becomes relatable to the masses is fascinating for me.
It's because he had Johnny Ive,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah. For anybody listening, who designed iTunes, but also like UI UX design genius. But you're right. Like I would love to sit and talk with him about how he not only conceptualized big visions, but can simplify their delivery. And a lot of people think that, UI UX simplicity is easy. I'm
Yeah.
like, no, that's usually like the 80th iteration. you
Yeah,
know,
you
so,
can say you see like, clunky functional platforms. And like for us, we're so used to iPhones and the way that they've changed everything with
yeah,
how Apple has designed applications. And it's kind of fascinating to see how everyone has just gone down that path and is addicted to the simplicity of it.
it changed for, the game for everybody, for customers, for users worldwide. I mean, everything. So, okay. Question three. In your opinion, what's the best music focused film for you for of all time for you? Now, I always tell people this can be like a documentary or a rockumentary or a fictitious movie. It doesn't have to be real. Just it had music at its core theme.
Yeah, and for me, it's maybe not the best, but it's more of like a recency bias thing. I really enjoyed the Queen movie on
Hmm.
Freddie Mercury. I
Hmm.
thought that was just really well done, and for me, really enlightening. I didn't know a lot about their story and his story, so it's really cool to kind of see the way that developed and just how they, ended up into the stardom that they did.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, a lot of artistic genius that came out of them and at that time. But I haven't seen the movie, so I'll have to check it out.
Wow.
Last question. What's an important book, podcast, or Audible that has helped you in your experience growing these businesses or spark your inner creativity and passion while building these businesses?
Yep. Back when I was at my job before this,
Hmm.
we had to read a book called Leadership and Self-Deception: Getting Out of the Box. And it's all about like understanding other people and being empathetic towards them. And the only way to like communicate any feedback, whether it's positive or negative, is to really get out of your own, personal box and to understand where they're coming from and kind of the factors that are affecting them in their life and, in work, but beyond work. And only once you do that can you really have like a conversation where you can effectively communicate and understand them and they understand where you're coming from. And that was really eye-opening just in terms of like for us we're a pretty horizontal team. We all have our roles, and with that there's just a lot that we need to do kind of hand in hand with each other. And as you're approaching that, even in a team like ours where it's not maybe as leadership focused, there's of course opportunities to lead one another with the different things that we do, and it's important to kind of always understand that. And for us, we're also best friends with each other. So like having that and having like everything intertwined in life, it's really important to understand the way that life affects people and how that can impact your abilities as a
Yes.
team to get the most out of each other.
It's true. Partnership, team,
Yeah.
team. Whether it's in friendship, in life, or in business, when you're running the court with people, it's the constant development of self, right? Raising our emotional quotient, our EQ, and actually having better communication abilities, and we can only do that. I think a lot of times, with the better we know ourselves, then the better we can identify and understand others, and then also help each other within our own like zones of genius and for the greater cause of what we're trying to build. So it's incredible. Yep. Well, the name of the book was, which was it again?
Leadership and
self-deception.
Getting out of the box, or something like that. It's actually like our work required us to read it, and I was like,
that's awesome.
I don't want to like read this required book. And then I got into it and I was like, okay, it's actually like pretty eye-opening.
I feel like that's it's probably a lot of requiring reading for the entire world right now. I mean, leadership and self-deception, because we can be our own saboteur, right? So if we're not careful in understanding ourselves. Amazing. So let's go back to the beginning. I would love to know how we got here. You've got this really key role. Things are growing for you guys. You had a completely different life and a different job before it. You can go as far back as you want, but it would really be great so that the audience can kind of see the bigger picture of how it all intertwined. And then of course, we're going to talk about a lot of like data-driven marketing, because that's this beautiful world that we live in now, what it actually means for brands, and a lot about electronic music, since I know that's also a love of yours. So we'll go from there, but I would love to hear your story, as would everybody else.
Yeah. One interesting thing, and I'll back up further than that, is that I actually left my job in September of 2019. And so for 4 or 5 years, I was kind of building this on top of that. And I'm a pretty like risk averse person when it comes to this level of decision making. In some ways I take risks, but with this, I kind of wanted it to get a little bit more mature before I kind of reached the point of jumping off and going all in on it. And it also meant it was in my best interest to move to Bali to do that, which for some people is like a no-brainer. Of course you do that. But I was enjoying my life, even though, I was like way too busy running 2 jobs. So yeah, I did both. And then I finally pulled the trigger on that. And that was the greatest decision I've ever made. But going all the way back, so I went to the University of Virginia and I thought I should be an engineer. I did not know what kind of engineer I wanted to be. So I ruled out all of them. And the one I ended up with was biomedical engineering. And, when you're 18, 19 years old, you really don't know what you want to do. Like for some people do, but most don't. And you either like go down a path and you just stick with it, or you go down a path and realize it's not the right place for you and you end up doing something else. Biomedical engineering was probably the hardest major that my school offered. And I did okay, but like doing okay isn't really good enough in that type of thing. And for me, like I didn't want to force myself to try to excel at something that I wasn't like naturally good at. And I just realized towards the end of that program that it wasn't entirely for me. I also did an econ major because I was interested in, more practical things in life and business and all of that. And then from there, I did a business master's program. It's like a 1-year condensed master's with a global focus, which was cool. I got to travel to Europe for a month. That's before they tell you about the impact of student loans and how long you're going to be repaying all of that.
Exactly.
That's not a different day. So from there, I ended up working at an IT consulting firm as a business analyst, and then later like a business analyst and project manager. And it was a good role for me because I was able to kind of function between the technical and the business sides. It was a consulting-based project, so I was working with clients and kind of like making sure that they can understand everything, while at the same rate communicating technical requirements to our developers and figuring out what needed to be developed and basically just communicating back and forth. And I was pretty good at that, but they started me off a little bit slow, and I was kind of just testing software. And I was pretty bored and looking for just like something else to sink my teeth into. And initially I was thinking, okay, here I am at this company. I have access to all these developers. I know there's developers that have some additional time on their hands. If I can just come up with an idea, then we can do it as like a side thing and see where it goes. And I filled a notebook with like pretty bad ideas, and ultimately realized like that I'm going to have to try to find a different way to go about this. And I started reaching out to a couple of businesses that I was interested in, not really expecting anything, just kind of like putting it out there. Like, hey, if you're looking for someone to get involved in this way, like I didn't really have any expectation out of it. I just wanted something to do. So I emailed info@1001tracklist.com, and I thought I was emailing a team of people. The way that the platform works is that there's lots of different users that are contributing track lists to the site. The track list is the track listing that a DJ plays in a DJ set or a radio show or a mix that they upload online. And I didn't quite understand that this was 100% community driven at the time that I reached out. I thought it was a team of people that were, kind of like the admins and doing a lot of this. But the site was built single-handedly by one German software developer named Jan. He started building the site in 2009, launched it in 2011. And actually, it's kind of funny. In order to get a user community off the ground, he faked a user community where he just put out all these different usernames that were actually him. But he wanted, in order to get the first real people in there, he kind of needed to show that it was an existing user community. And then eventually other people started contributing, and he had to build all these tools to enable people to use the site in a way different from him, to kind of have separate the admin controls from, the different user credentials. And so when I reached out to him, the site was at an interesting place because the design was lacking. There wasn't a logo. There were dormant social media accounts, and there wasn't so much going on with the business side of it. So I just saw a huge opportunity for almost anyone to get involved and do something you don't have to do much to make it productive in that sense, just to start really kind of having the business side of it exist in addition to the website. And so I basically just built a relationship with him over email and Skype. He actually had received several messages like mine previously and ignored all of them because he was overwhelmed and didn't really feel like dealing with someone else and having to answer to that.
Yeah.
But I kind of wiggled my way in there, and eventually he gave me and my best friend Jacob access to the social media accounts. And then we created a concept to do interviews with artists as a content section on the site. We didn't want to be just another EDM blog out there and write our opinions and write articles about random news things, because frankly, I don't care about that. And I don't think people should care about my opinion as just some kid doing this. I think what's more interesting is actually getting the artists to put their own thoughts into it and kind of tell you the story of why they created a track or what it was like working with someone or what they're up to. And so we created this concept and we launched that. And that was one of the first things that we did in terms of really getting involved. From there, we started taking over the advertising on the site and managing more of the revenue generating part of the business. But getting our start doing the interviews was for us really cool because we got to interview all these artists in person and meet them, and they were excited to actually meet us because all of a sudden there's faces to this brand that was just this kind of mysterious thing that existed to them. And I knew of the site. I had been using it for years as my way of discovering music and DJ sets and mixes, but I didn't understand how closely artists were paying attention to it until I actually started meeting people and seeing their excitement about it. Because for them, it's useful. It was then, and it is still now, it's useful for their own music discovery to see what, related artists are playing in their sets, but also to discover which artists are playing their music in their sets. So if I'm an artist and I see that David Guetta played my track at a festival, that's huge. That's an extremely important data point. And so also getting into our charts is extremely important to people. And a lot of people say that it's the charts they care about most within dance music.
It's incredible. I was taking a bunch of notes and just thinking through the whole path. Well, first of all, I feel you on the student loans for the masters. They don't tell you about that, going in. But what was really interesting, a couple of areas. First of all, it really resonated with me when, how you said you approached 1001 track lists, and he had seen, the founder had seen, other emails in the past. It's true, because it's you're overwhelmed and you're in it and you're doing these things. And I've been in that position before, and you get a lot of people who they write because they want to help. And I think that they mean well, but a lot of times as a founder, you kind of go through this, I don't have, you almost feel like, you need to delegate, but you don't have time to show you how to do everything and tell you everything that you need, because if they knew what they needed, they probably would have already hired for it or would have had it or would have done it. And so it's interesting. You prove such a beautiful point of, I think I know what you need, and I'm going to just kind of keep trying to talk with you and get through to you and take over, and show you like, I'm a go-getter. I already know this stuff, and I just want to help. And that's like the most gifted thing somebody could ever do to a founder. So if anybody's listening, like, because otherwise everybody gets emails and you're like, yeah, I know you want to work for me, but like, I don't want you to work for me to work for you. So I can constantly like tell you what to do.
It's a really long process to
Right?
establish and build trust. And
Exactly.
And Jan is like, I'm a stubborn guy. He's a really stubborn guy. And so like he pretty much initially rejected all of my ideas, largely due to just like time and resource constraints. And from there, it was like, okay, I just kind of like agreed with him that some of them are not feasible. I backburnered a lot of them. And over time, just kind of played a very patient game until we were able to ease up some of his time and have him build a lot of like what he does into like super user control so I can help him with that. That's actually the thing and we still only have one developer on 1001 Tracklist. It's just him. And so a lot of his time is eaten up with managing everything incoming and kind of like needing to make changes to the database. Like I think there are things that only he can do in addition to being the guy to develop out the platform further.
But the genius of, in this day and age where we can be lean like that, right, operationally, and then to have people to run the court with like yourself that are like, hey, operationally, I can make this a little bit more streamlined so you can do more of what you want to do to stay in that zone. And we'll make processes that complement that.
And it's funny because it's some of that and it's some of like, I might say that, but I have no idea what I'm doing at the start. But it's more of like, I don't know how to do this, but in time, I'll figure it out. And so it's like, you know enough and you know enough of what the problem is. And then you just need to kind of like critically think and allow yourself the time to get to the right solutions. And a lot of it's also just trial and error.
Yes.
Figure out some things work and figure out some things that don't, and try not to make the same mistake twice and learn from it and grow in that way.
Well, I mean, you said all the key talking points: critical thinking. The fact that is, you come with this engineer mentality of problem solving, and then the only way we figure it out is to tinker with it, and trial and error, which is also you see a lot of people who halt and they want everything to be perfect. I'm like, you have to keep moving, you have to keep building something and tinkering with it to see like, oh, that didn't work, this does. And that's how you mold and shape it. So, I mean, he was probably very lucky that you came along and started to kind of shift things quite a bit, right?
I still remember the first time I heard him say something like really nice about me to someone else while I was right there. And I was like, oh my God, it's the nicest thing you've ever said about me.
Well, he's probably so much in his own.
We forget to, praise each other. And so it was really nice for me to kind of hear how much he appreciates that. And he and I work really well together. I mean, we have an extremely close relationship and we kind of tag team a lot of it. And then for the 1001 Tracklist business, so it's primarily Jan, myself, Jacob, who's my best friend from college, who we just kind of like together. So we moved in together in DC. And as the opportunity came about, we just figured like, let's tag team this and see how far we can go with it. Never thought it would go this far. I'll be honest. He was much quicker to recognize like I should go all in on this, like himself, and he did. And to his credit, like he saw the opportunity right away and just is like a full throttle person, and it's really helped drive everything to where we are today.
Yeah, it's a great complementary teammate.
Yep.
I also love the fact when you brought up we didn't realize how this whole thing had built itself by community, and I know you and I get this. A lot of artists in this day and age get this, but sometimes bigger businesses don't. They don't understand that like the new paradigm in business is community-centric growth. And especially as a collective group within the platform, sharing ideas, sharing data, sharing feedback. You don't have to be perfect, but you have like admins and mods and people who are like, oh, okay, good to know. Okay, cool. Here, we'll tweak this. Anything else you guys want? Like, it's a very humbling, experience and a stick and move using the community to better grow, their wants and needs. And the old paradigm was like, we'll market to the people, we'll force it down their throats, and then hopefully they just like it, we're fulfilling a need.
The community for us is really the single most valuable thing about the platform, because that's who we rely on to do a lot of the work of adding and editing or suggesting the proper edits to everything. And we can't do it without them, and they're really the lifeblood of the entire thing. And my role kind of, I wear a lot of hats, but one of the things that I do is really I'm like the community manager, and I have like personal relationships with a lot of the top users of the site. And that's been longstanding through like our support system of just like having threaded conversations with them. But now also we have a really active Discord.
I was just about to ask.
It's an incredible tool for us to just engage with everyone and kind of like have conversations there and post announcements and all of that. It's overwhelming at times,
right?
Me at least, but it's a really effective way of kind of having everyone in one place.
I was just about you beat me to it. I was gonna say, do you guys have like a Discord, an active Discord? Because community is just, they can thrive so well in there. But yeah, you can have, with multi-channels and categories, so many conversations can be going on, and then everybody can like jump on the phone, they can jump on video. So it's been working really well for your guys' community then.
Yep. We actually just pushed out an important design update on 1001 Tracklist that we've been working on for almost a year. And it's kind of, so we're doing like a 2-phase design approach, where this one was, but it has some like user interface adjustments and some tweaks and a dark mode, but it was a huge like technological upgrade across the front end and back end code, because Jan built the site in 2009 and has single-handedly scaled up the technology. And so we needed to invest a significant period of time to upgrade all of that and kind of give us a stronger foundation on which we can build on top of. And so now, coming at some point, I've learned never to promise dates, will be another phase of the design where we're currently working on those designs now and kind of really modernizing it and making everything a lot sleeker. And so I'm really excited for when that will come.
And you bring up such another great point. When you're constantly managing function because it's serving an innate need and there are people relying on it, and at the same time you have to modernize the user experience for the people who are there for the artists that are using the function. And so there's so many things at the same time that have to be done. And I think sometimes people in the general world, they don't always see that, behind the scenes, it's a lot of work. There's a lot of work.
It's such a delicate balance to strike with a platform like ours that is extremely functional. And for a lot of people, it's got too much going on. And I get that. But so it's like we need to cater towards the people that you actually use all of that like crazy looking stuff on the site, because they need to have the ability to edit all of that. And then for someone that gets to the site for the first time, we have to try to make it a bit simpler and easier to understand just the core concepts of what's going on. And so we're starting to do that more and more, where we're kind of hiding a lot of the stuff behind, like once you get into, say, edit mode on the track list. And that's going to be a shift that we push towards more and more. And it's funny, like a lot of people were really happy with the design updates because, the design is, I think, inarguably better than before. But then for people where it's like, why is this not here? Or it's now like, it's less efficient to do all of that. It was a combination of like, okay, that's great feedback. And, within a few days, we were able to make a few tweaks, like all like relatively minor tweaks, but in aggregate, they have a pretty big impact. And then the other thing I said is just give it 2 weeks. Like, I understand, like you've used this site for years as it was. And I understand not really wanting it to change. You didn't ask for this change, but just give it a couple of weeks. We'll make some fixes and let's just all adjust and then see where we're at. And then see if, there are still things that we need to do over the long run.
Incredible. And so let's talk about data quite a bit, because you've got multiple points of data at this point. You've got the track lists and what's happening with artists. You've also got the users and, what their interests are. So let's geek out for a minute on data and we'll simplify it for the general public who are like, data, but they don't realize that like everybody's data, obviously it's a little bit more talked about now, is being used in some way. And obviously we're talking about the more responsible way for anybody listening in which we're actually trying to do right by the people who are, who are finding, in this case, plays and streams and, other artists that are using the work. But I would love for you to, kind of go a little bit further into the details of the data and how it's been helpful and what you're learning in the process.
Yeah, so In terms of user data,
Yeah.
we take a very minimalistic approach and are very respectful towards user
Amen.
privacy. There are surely opportunities for us to grow our business by tapping into that, but it's a really fine line that you walk. And it's one that we as a business don't really want to do. And we'll, over time, we'll start to do stuff where we can maybe tailor things towards particular users and do it in a way where it benefits you without like selling your user data or anything like that. I mean, the one thing that we do is we have advertising on the site, and so when you opt into that, you opt into like having the anonymized data shared, and so you're gonna, if you're clicking around on cars, you're gonna see a car ad. But that's what happens across the board. That's how ads work, and that's what drives a lot of the revenue for our business. So that has to remain. We do as much as we can actually work with artists, labels, music companies to offer them the ads based on the site. And that way it's, you kind of remove that the user cookie part of the process. And it's really relevant targeted advertising that we think, just that's the optimal solution in terms of all of that. In terms of the music data, with that on 1001 track lists, with all the things that we have going on, it does get kind of simple in that it's really just like, you've got the track lists, you've got the artists, you've got the tracks. And the really cool thing that we have is for an individual track, mapping that to all of the track lists that it's in. And that's the idea that kind of spawned Songstats. And it's the idea that differentiates us from other track listing platforms that have popped up over time. I mean, it's really that and the user community that are like two enormous differentiators. And, there's a lot that we need to do to keep the community as thriving as it is and to build out the platform further. But it gives us a huge head start on anyone that wants to try to do the same thing.
I feel like by taking a more minimalistic, simplistic approach, you're keeping the data much more organic too, right?
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, because I don't fully know how I should as a growth hacker myself or a growth marketer, but like how manipulation of streams and other things work out there. But they are. There's ways where the machine is doing its thing. Like, how did that start? Like, what exactly happened? I feel like it's usually marketers. I think I once heard Gary Vee say something like, the worst thing that happened to marketers was marketers, or marketing was marketers, or something like that. It was somebody.
In terms of like data manipulation.
Yeah, like how did data manipulation? I'm talking about in terms of music, by the way, because we know data manipulation elsewhere is done in a multitude of ways. But like within the music industry, because I think sometimes people don't understand how data manipulation has become a thing.
Yeah, I think it's people that are just looking for all ways, that they can grow.
Yeah.
And then it ultimately is shortcuts. And I mean, you see it often with like artists' social media accounts. Like it's really easy to see if they have fake followers and they have no engagement and all that. And it's such a bad look. Like when people spot that. And maybe that's not something that like the everyday fan will notice, but when people in the industry notice that, you don't really view that so favorably. Right. And like you with that type of thing, you really you need to think like outside the box in some ways, but in a more like proper, like creative way to drive growth and engage with the people that you have. And that's what I think is really important and lost on a lot of people is like, you think about the people that you have and then you think, how do you grow on top of that? But the best way to do that is to be providing like value in some way for the people that you have, who then will share that, and it kind of grows in that way. And of course, you'll do things to reach new people, but you already have established good content and ways that already engage with the type of audience you want.
I love that. I've been preaching that for nearly a decade before, community was a big thing. I treat everybody in my few 100,000 people online as a community. I grew it with no bots right from the start, all community. And it's always about asking them too, like, hey, what did you like? What do you not like? Anything else that you guys want to see and things like that. And you're absolutely right. I think it's a very lean startup approach too, because in a lot of ways, you're just saying like, look, I've got 100 of you. So you like this music. Cool. I was thinking about doing some merch. Do you guys like this? Would you maybe want this as well? Like, oh, you do? Okay, great. I'm going to make it and then I'll put up a store and then you guys can buy it from there. Okay. And then like in a lot of ways, doing things in a contained space like that allows you that as you know, you're going to be some mistakes along the way, and they'll let you know like, oh, hey, the shopping cart isn't working. And you can be like, oh, thank you for that. Let me get
that's
that.
actually the best time to build something like that. Is when you have this
Exactly.
smaller community, and you don't have to like make a mistake that 100,000 people see and like rip you to shreds
Yes.
for. You can do it. They're patient with you because they're excited to be on the ground floor of it. And then from there, you build everything around it and you create content that is working, and you position yourself to grow over time. But it takes a lot of time and dedication and like constantly hitting on all different fronts to see which one will
Right.
work.
And you're learning along the way of like building in processes and systems that can help manage all of them. So it's like a lot of people would say, I want 1 million followers, like real followers. I'm like, are you ready to service 1 million real followers?
Yep.
So, and you're right. A lot of people, since social, I had to help a lot of companies with that. And they like, oh, well, so-and-so's numbers. I'm like, oh, you want me to dissect those for you real quick? And you can easily like see how they're manipulated. It's so wild. Well, turning the attention a little bit away, but still kind of maybe using, knowledge that you've learned from the data and the feedback from the community. Let's talk about electronic music a little bit. Like, what are some of the trends that you're noticing within the community? What are some of the trends that you maybe are noticing even in electronic music as a whole? I mean, obviously, there's a lot of changes going on the last couple of years, but let's wrap about that for a little bit. Like, what are some of the things that you're noticing?
One of the things that's interesting about electronic music is that artists within electronic tend to take data and like data-driven strategies more as like more of a focal point than artists in other genres. And that's not to say other artists in other genres don't, but it's aided by the fact that there's more data points within electronic because you have 1,001 track lists and that set of data that shows you which other DJs are playing your music. That's totally unique to electronic music and DJs, because if you're a rock band, you only play your music and no other bands are really going to play your music unless they're playing a cover of a song. And that's like a rare case. So you've got that. And then you've got the stores where other DJs buy your music from. And so it used to be, that people would buy music in the masses. iTunes was a thing. iTunes is still actually used, a bit, but not so much. We're really in the streaming age now. However, DJs don't function in a nightclub in the streaming age. And when they're, putting out a radio show or a mix, they're purchasing music for that. And so if you're an artist that is doing really well in terms of having your music bought, that's like a huge sign of how successful you are in terms of that like inner circle of the DJ electronic world, and often a leading indicator for like later success.
I hadn't really thought about that. Well, in my opinion, you're absolutely right about the more data points, because as a electronic DJ, you have your mixes, you have people playing your mixes, you have locations that are playing your mixes, right? You have stores where your mixes are being bought by other DJs. You're right, because a rock band or a hip hop artist can pretty much just do their own. Hip hop artists may do some freestyles and things like that, but at the same time, that's their own stuff. Whereas DJs are all interchanging each other's music. And I also hadn't thought about the fact that like, if certain DJs are really digging your mixes right now, you probably tend to also know and understand their styles a little bit to be like, oh, like I can see how this would complement that style. And you can kind of have some more fun with the data, knowing those people like it, and then kind of contributing, kind of playing back and forth between your music and theirs in a way, and like the things that appeal to them. So I never really thought about that, but I can see how there's a lot more data involved with electronic.
Yeah, and that also kind of touches on the next point, is that within electronic and within DJs that are performing DJs in clubs and at festivals, you need to make music that works for your sets, especially as like a house or a techno DJ. But then you also need to make music that works for streaming. And it's pretty rare that the music is crossover on both. Most of the time, you'll see with the music that people are releasing, they're releasing music that's more vocal oriented, more streaming purposed, and then music that's more, just like pumping for the clubs. And it's kind of important for a lot of people to differentiate that in order to figure out this track should do well here, and this track should do well here. And you kind of grow in both of those ways. There are some people that manage to do both in one, but it's very difficult to do that.
Right. What do you guys well, I know you already started talking a little bit about like what you're working on, coming up, but like what else do you guys have going on that like with the platform and the function and the redesign and stuff like that? What are the things you guys working on right now?
For 1001 Tracklist?
Yes, we'll start there and then we'll move over into
Yeah,
Songstats.
For 1001 Tracklist, so it's a lot of, improving the site
Yeah.
and growing the brand and also growing our top 101 producers brand. So the top 101 producers is something that we started a few years ago, and it's basically a ranking composed entirely of the data on the site. It's not influenced in any way, which does differentiate it from a lot of the other rankings that are out there in electronic music.
Everything.
And we it's not perfect. It's not like the be all end all. This is the best DJ in the world, but this is what the data is saying. And it's basically like the winner is basically the artist who's been most supported by other DJs in the calendar year. And so with this ranking, it's grown each year in terms of the attention that it receives and just like what we put into it. And so it's a big focus for us to keep pushing that as far as we can to make it as big of a thing. And it's also something that's like really rewarding for a lot of the artists that are in it. You have plenty of the big names in it, but you also have up and coming artists that are soon to be big, we think, because they're recognized by their peers as putting out music that, is worth playing in sets and mixes. And so it's really cool to give them the showcase that they deserve through that.
Yeah, I bet that'd also be pretty cool. You get to see kind of the newbies coming on, like the newcomers coming on, and like probably you're able to gauge how quickly they're growing and how quickly they're maybe also not overtaking the established, but I bet that's actually pretty interesting data to watch, right?
Yep. And so that's a big focus, and that's remained a focus. It's an area that we're really growing the media side of our business. And then the other thing that's incredibly exciting has been less in our control, but it's just the world coming back, especially here in the US, with live music. And, there's been more content than ever coming onto our platform in terms of the artists doing live streams and more artists doing, weekly or monthly radio shows and just putting mixes online. And that has been great, especially to have that like just level of engagement across the board. But the most exciting music is the music that gets premiered live and kind of generates hype, and just like seeing actual human people at a festival is, for me, always going to be much cooler than anything that we can do in streaming. And streaming has come such a long way in terms of like the VR stuff, the extended reality stuff. Like there's been some really cool stuff getting developed during this time that I think will kind of continue to exist and continue to grow. But as someone who enjoys being at a live venue myself, you cannot replace that. And I'm really excited for that to come back, and just to kind of, we position ourselves as a brand during this time to grow even in a time without live music. So I'm excited for us to be at a bigger place than we were, a year and a half ago, and to now continue to grow with live music and really cool content around us.
That's cool. That's incredible. And now you got, and at the same time, you're also doing some pretty cool things with Songstats. I have Songstats pulled up. This is incredible. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what you guys are doing over there too.
Yeah, so I'm in a kind of unique position where
aren't we all?
Yeah, well, so we've got the 1001 team and we've got the Songstats team, and Songstats kind of like spurred out of 1001. And most people are only focused, predominantly on one or the other, but I split my time almost down the middle across both. Songstats was an idea that we had. I think we mentioned before. It was kind of based on the 1001 tracklist data. And then upon seeing what was out there in the broader music analytics space, we realized that we had the ability to build a platform that was showcasing how your music is performing across all the DSPs that you're releasing to, and places like Shazam and 1001 Tracklist, and also electronic focused places. But to do it in a way where it was very artist centric, and we really wanted to build a mobile app and leverage like notifications through an app, whereas especially at the time and even still now, a lot of the other platforms that are out there on music data are a bit more enterprise focused and at a bit of a higher price point. And we wanted to make it really an entry level thing and a Netflix type price for an artist to just make their life easier, to not have to check all these individual platforms, to know how you're performing everywhere, and then to build tools. Like one of the first things that we did is like you can directly share any accomplishment to Instagram with like a cool artwork that we've designed just to show I've been added to this playlist, or I'm charting, in France, or I've been played by Tiesto at this festival, to make it an easy way for people to create content out of the data.
That's cool. That's really cool, man. Like, you guys got to be excited about that.
Yeah, it's been a really exciting period for us with Songstats, because we had been building it for 2 or 3 years before we launched it at Songstats last year. It was under a different name and branding, and the first version of it was built directly on top of a 1001 track list. So we only had electronic music in there, but even then we only had the electronic music that was getting played in DDIS mixes. So for an artist that had tracks that never really got DDIS ported, but they're still important tracks, it was a very manual process for us to get all that in there. And so the first like major thing that we needed to do was just re-architect the entire platform to pull in music that's being put out everywhere. And so now we treat 1001 track lists as a data source, the same as Spotify, Apple Music. These are all the different places to pull in the full catalogs. And we had to create this engine in the background that can pull in all these different tracks to match them up and create our concept of a universal track that holds all the different little track entities.
Well, I mean, I love this because when you look at, well, first of all, the fact you said, it doesn't have to be enterprise level. Like, let's make it affordable, because that's also the majority. A majority of everyone from your DIY artist to your independent with maybe a manager, like just trying to come up and manage it all themselves. But nowadays they're also content creators in a lot of ways. And as a content creator, I'm constantly, it's interesting to see who shares your work, but you don't always know. You built into like, oh, hey, this is, trending right now, or this is so-and-so is playing this at a club, and so you can actually take data to help turn it into content to foster more community engagement. I mean, that's huge. And maybe it's just the geek in me seeing it that way, but like, that's a pretty cool thing. And it also allows an artist to be more tied to the impact of their work too, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of data points. I mean, like for someone that pays like really close attention to Spotify for artists, which honestly most people should, they have really good data that they provide through that. And Spotify at the moment is really the most important platform in terms of music streaming globally. It's important to pay attention to that, even in addition to a platform like ours. We're working on pulling in more detailed levels of data to try to really make it the place that you only need to go. But there's like Shazam charting, where you can be charting in a particular city, and you probably aren't going to notice that yourself unless you're doing the work to manually compile all that information. So that's why having it here in one place and getting notified about that is really important, especially when it comes to the geographic data. Because if you know that you're building a market there, that's a really effective way for you to make a case for yourself to be touring there, and kind of grow in that way.
I mean, the industry must be pretty, well, I guess it depends on who you talk to in the industry, but wouldn't the industry be pretty excited about this right now, what you guys are doing? Because I mean, that effect on marketing and touring and geographic location and community, and I mean, it encapsulates all the needs, a lot of the needs.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a really big year for us. It was actually an interesting time to launch Songstats. It was March of last year when the world was shutting down,
right? And
we were in normal conditions probably 2 months from launch, especially because we just had a bunch of travel lined up. We all play Frisbee. We were going to be playing in a beach Frisbee tournament in the Philippines, and, just kind of like living life a little bit, but at the same rate, building this really hard. And, we were getting really close to the launch. When everything was shutting down, we just figured like, okay, like we can take a couple different approaches, but we agreed that the best approach would be just to work as hard as we could and like hit on every aspect that we needed to do to make it the best possible launch that we could. And it was for us also really therapeutic to make that like the singular focal point for, however many weeks it needed to get it ready to launch, and to kind of like filter out some of everything that was happening, which was extremely depressing. And so we just put everything we had into the launch to get it right and make as big of an impact with it as we could, because we'd been building it. And we'd been building it under the different branding, and we've been redesigning it and getting all of it ready. So we had a feeling that it was going to have a big impact when we finally did launch and really take the platform to market. And it's been a really good time, honestly, for us to get it out there in front of artists, because you have people that are normally touring and maybe wouldn't notice, this new product that's out there, but we were able to, get it exposed to a lot of people. And it's been a significant year of growth for us. And there's a lot that we're continuing to do to really build out the platform and figure out what's most critical to, our user base, to figure out what can help them the most with the platform. And that's really exciting for us in the months and years ahead.
That's incredible. Where can, I mean, a lot of people already know about you guys in the industry and whatnot, but a lot more people need to know about you. So where can they find out about everything you guys are doing, like online right now, or like the best way to kind of start navigating either platform?
Yeah. So 1001 Tracklist is 1001tracklist.com. And from there, it's like really a site for discovery. And so if you're a music lover, particularly within electronic, you can kind of go in there, search for artists and play around and see what people are putting out. For me, even before I got involved in doing what I'm doing, I just used it as like my go-to hub for finding DJ sets and mixes, because you can go to SoundCloud, you can go to Mixcloud, you can go to YouTube, but we have all of that integrated within. And so it's kind of like no matter where the DJ sets get put out, we have a lot of them on our platform. So I've used it in that way for my own personal music consumption. For Songstats, you can go to songstats.com or download the mobile app. And we actually put out a lot of content on what we call the Songstats Lab. It's lab.songstats.com. And there we're just putting out interviews with people at Beatport, which is one of the stores for electronic music. We put out our own research in terms of like the data that's available on Spotify, and just kind of like put out different insights that we're able to pull together from our experience and from talking to people, all ultimately related to music data.
That's incredible. You guys have amazing things going on. And then on social, are you guys able to get in touch there as well too? You guys have some good social accounts?
Yeah, especially on 1001 Tracklist, we have a really big Instagram. So I mentioned the people on the 1001 Tracklist team. The other core member is Fahim, who got started with us when he was 18. And we, at the time, like honestly, I barely touched Instagram, and I'm not like a marketing execution person. I can kind of help with like marketing strategies, but I'm not the person to go and do the grunt work needed to grow an Instagram channel, for example. So Fahim has grown our Instagram from like 8,000 when he took over to 418,000 or something today. All from
Wow.
a really effective and consistent sort of like social media strategy with a heavy focus on Instagram.
I mean, that's incredible. It really is incredible. And yes, it does take something to grow an Instagram and it does take grunt work. So thank you for pointing that out. It really does, especially if you're community driven and focused on the content and the experience, but that's incredible. So, okay. So everybody can find you guys at 1001 Tracklist on Insta, or 1001 Tracklist, 1001tracklist.com, songstats.com. Does Songstats also have some social?
Yeah, it's either at Songstats or potentially at Songstats app.
Yep. You guys are growing there too, apparently. That's amazing. Can anybody, I mean, you don't have to, of course, but like if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, is there a great way to get in touch with you, or through social or email or anything like that, or just through the website? Or
Yeah, so actually for 1001 Tracklist, and some people, this might not be for everyone, but we run all of our messaging through Facebook, like through our Facebook page directly. And it's been a really effective way for us to for me especially, to manage all the conversations.
Amen.
That's the best way to get in touch with us on that side, or through our Discord, which you can find a link to that from our website. Songstats, you can email support@songstats.com.
Amazing. Yeah. And you're right. Not a lot of people a lot of times people think that Facebook messaging is just like as if you're trying to do only for like marketing. They don't realize like, well, technically it's also weirdly enough a mini CRM that because you can then pull it into the, into the dashboard, and you can actually look at all the.
I've been using it for years, and I have like extremely long-standing conversations with
there you go.
most of the core users of the site that have been around there. So I kind of need to stay. I do exactly that for like my own personal workflow.
Yeah.
And mostly I just go right to that without looking at the rest of Facebook. I've gotten really good at that.
Right. There you go. maybe Facebook needs that feedback. They're probably listening to us, so it's okay. Evan, this was absolutely incredible, and I really appreciate your time and talking about what you guys are doing with 1001 track lists and Songstats. It's incredible work, and I love, again, its simplistic approach to stats, which keeps it really, really organic. And then what you guys are doing with Songstats is incredible and cool, because I think it expands the data and the artist type and the genres. So it'll be really exciting to see what happens in the coming years. So thank you for being here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for your time, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. Kick back for 1 second here. We'll talk to you in a minute. But for everybody listening, be sure to check out Songstats on Insta, songstats.com. You could also go to 1001tracklist.com and 1001 tracklist on Insta. Reach out. Evan gave some great ways to reach out if you guys are an artist or you're looking, or a DJ or a producer or whatever, or you're an avid music listener. It doesn't matter. Go check them out. We just appreciate you guys tuning in as well. It's On Top of the Covers every single week. It means so much to us and our movement. And we also want to thank all of you guys for giving us feedback and being part of this journey. Please, I have to ask, of course, and I'm grateful to ask, give us a 5-star written review on Apple. It definitely helps expand the show. And we're growing quickly, and we're very appreciative of that. And that just is a testament to the community. You can also follow us on all major platforms at We Are Orlove, and myself at Matt Gottesman. I say this all the time. I said it at the beginning of the show. I say it on every show. You guys can reach out to me. I actually handle the account myself and answer each and every single text, DM, reply, response for the last nearly 8, 9, 10 years. You can also subscribe to our Orlove channel. If you are listening to this right now on Apple, Spotify, or like 20 other platforms, we actually have this video as well on YouTube. You can subscribe to our Orlove YouTube channel, and you can get in the conversation as well over there. So we appreciate all of you. For Evan Sachs, my incredible guest, myself, Matt Gottesman, and for On Top of the Covers, we're out.